I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
We talked about this a bit in the last episode. Recently, we had the passing of legendary B-movie director Roger Corman. And out of all of the movies that he's done that is accessible to us because this is a Disney podcast, we've gone with the unreleased movie, The Fantastic Four. Kiki, I know you're a really huge Roger Corman fan. I remember you scheduling a watch party the weekend of the Oscars where he was getting the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Well, the thing is that was something that was kind of a shock, because that was I want to say it was a MarsCon weekend.
Yeah, it was, because most of us, had done our little tradition post-con dinner, and you had stayed behind with some of the artists and your ex.
Yeah.
That's the last time we'll mention him on this podcast.
But I know that our good friend Insane Ian was among the people who had stayed behind, because we both wanted to watch the Oscars. And so he and I and a few of the other people who were interested had stayed together in one of the, like, a suite that the con had.
The musician's lounge, as we call it.
Musician's lounge suite. And we were watching the Oscars, and all of a sudden they were like, and this year's Lifetime Achievement Oscar goes to Roger Corman. And Ian and I absolutely flipped our bleepity bleep. And the thing is that nobody else that was in the room at the time could really understand why we were doing that. But Ian and I kind of both understood kind of the absolute weight of that. Mm-hmm. Because anybody who's listened to enough episodes of this will know that I kind of have a particular philosophy of filmmaking, which is that if you give a director too much freedom, too much money, too much do whatever you want, the movie tends to go bad. And we've talked about a lot of those movies before. Mm-hmm. Where they just kind of go like, here's an infinite budget and infinite time and do whatever you want. And those movies tend to turn out really crap. And a lot of that philosophy comes from Roger Corman. Roger Corman's philosophy was, I want to do this for the smallest budget I can, in the least amount of time I can, using as much reused sets, props, actors. You know, if he was making 2 movies back to back, he would try to figure out a way to reuse sets from movie A for movie B, and see if there were any actors he could pull from movie A to movie B.
Big example, the original Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
Not the musical version with that everyone knows from the 80s, the original 60s movie.
Black and white.
Black and white. I didn't mean it.
And that was Jack Nicholson's first film role. And that's the other thing about Roger Corman is, There is a kind of unofficial thing called the Roger Corman Film School, which was not really a film school. It was just people who had worked with Roger Corman and then went on to become massively successful, like Ron Howard. Got his, not his first acting job, but his first directing job under Corman. People like Martin Scorsese got his first directing job thanks to Roger Corman. Francis Ford Coppola, same thing. People like James Cameron would not have a career if not for Roger Corman. So basically, most of the people that you're like, oh, those are huge Oscar-winning directors. Half of them worked with Corman first. He also discovered a lot of actors that you would know of, like Sandra Bullock and Tommy Lee Jones and Charles Bronson and Robert frickin' De Niro. Okay. So, even though you may not have known this guy's name, and even though he's known as the king of the B movie, basically half of Hollywood owed Roger Corman their careers. He revitalized the careers of people like Vincent Price back in the day, and a lot of the old horror movie actors got their second wind because of Roger Corman putting them back in movies. So that was kind of where he was at. But the thing is that he had the chance many times to go into big budget films. There were people that were like, you could probably make really good movies if we just gave you lots of money and lots of time and whatever. And Roger Corman was like, no, I'm exactly where I want to be. This is what I should be doing. I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing under the philosophy that I want to be working with. This is where I am most creative. In fact, one of my favorite stories about Roger Corman is that he was the first person they sent the script for Waterworld to. The Kevin Costner infamous bomb movie. And Roger Corman looked at it, and they had sent it to him because basically the script was crap, and they were like, it's crap, send it to Roger Corman, he'll make it. And he looked at it and he was like, are you kidding me? This is going to cost millions of dollars and take forever to film. This is not the type of movie I do. And he was right. I mean, Roger Corman was known for like, I'm going to film this in 5 days for, $200,000.
Like I said, Little Shop of Horrors was filmed in a week.
Yeah. So he knew exactly what he was talking about. At the time Waterworld came out, it was like the most expensive movie ever made. But there's no way you could have made that movie on a Roger Corman budget and schedule. He knew what he was talking about.
Ironically, that philosophy of all people will be taken by Ryan Reynolds when filming the Deadpool movies. As we talked about in the first Deadpool movie, whenever we get around to the second Deadpool movie, the same thing. Keep the budget low, because that was our sweet spot.
Yeah, and that is, like I said, that's the Corman philosophy. And a lot of people, the really smart people in Hollywood, and I do think that Ryan Reynolds is one of those people, um, will stick to that philosophy. Like, even if they have the extra money, they will try to come in under budget, under time, reuse things when they can, you know,
Hmm.
and all because they know that those constraints tend to make them more creative. And that philosophy is very much what Corman put throughout Hollywood and the people who trained with him. And some of the people who trained with him kept that philosophy. Some of the people let the money go to their head later on. Not necessarily going to name any names, but if you go back through the list of people who trained with him, you can kind of see which ones uh, went off script on that. But yeah, I mean, he was such a fascinating man, and I'm not sure whether Roger Corman or Burt I. Gordon have more films that were riffed by Mystery Science Theater, but he's up there. I think he has somewhere between 6 and 8 that were done on Mystery Science Theater over the years.
And mostly because a lot of Corman's movies he allowed to become public domain.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we ran into in talking about which ones we were going to do is because his his films are, some of them are legitimately owned by Disney. Some of them have lapsed into the public domain. Some of them are owned by Shout Factory, great company, love Shout Factory. And a lot of them have gone under Amazon.
Through MGM, I believe, right?
Yeah, I don't remember if it was MGM or another buyout, but they're now under Amazon. So, yeah, there's like 4 or 5 different companies, depending on who he was working for at the time, that now own bits of his legacy. And there are a few that have gone into public domain, but not very many. The reason we're doing this one is, one, because the Marvel connection, and I mean, mainly because of the Marvel connection, and 2, because it was never really released. So it's kind of like,
The story behind this movie is legendary.
yeah, the story behind the movie is legendary, but also it's like, nobody seems to really know who owns it because it was never really released, and it was also never really uh intended to be released. We'll get into that, but also this is one of the few movies that you can kind of just put up on YouTube and nobody ever claims it because nobody seems to own it.
Yeah, like when we decided to do this, there's like a dozen different uploads of this on YouTube in various degrees of quality. So we could say, okay, we'll just, and when Corman passed, a few people just decided to re-upload the movie, and for YouTube compression from an old VHS bootleg, doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, interestingly, this was one of the few things, and we'll get into, how how it was, you know, distributed and stuff, but the main way you could see it for ages was you buy a bootleg at a convention, or you see it shown at a convention at like a midnight movie.
Ironically, I saw this movie at a convention, the very same convention that we just talked about. Um, you mentioned MST3K. Our friend Luke Ski at one point had his own little MST3K crew, And I believe they only did like 2 episodes or 3. But one of the episodes they did was Roger Corman's Fantastic Four because no one knew who owned it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. So I have a copy. I have 2 copies of Corman's Fantastic Four. One is the movie on a bootleg DVD, and the second is this MST3K style rift done by Luke Ski and his friends from like 15 years ago.
Yeah, but it was also kind of the only thing that you could bootleg and sell at a convention and not ever worry about anybody coming after you.
This and the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Yeah, yeah,
two
this
right next to each
and
other.
the Star Wars Holiday Special. But because like nobody cared, nobody was going to come after you for like copyright for it. And still that's kind of true, you know. There's nobody seems to care. Although weirdly, the Star Wars Holiday Special is slowly becoming more and more canon. So I do think that at one point, Disney's gonna start cracking down on that and being like, you know what, screw it, we just own that now.
Hey, put both of these on Disney Plus. I dare you.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into that, but I'm kind of for that. The Yeah, so now that I've kind of fangirl about Roger Corman, who absolutely was like the linchpin of Hollywood, and everyone should follow his philosophy more and study his work. And he released a book called How I Made 200 movies in Hollywood and never lost a dime, I think is the name of the book. I may have the number of movies wrong, but yeah, it's like how I made X number of movies in Hollywood and never lost a dime. But if you ever want like a really funny, uplifting book of like get out there and do it and live your dream, it's a great book. So I recommend that. And also just go watch Roger Corman films. A lot of them are up on Amazon Prime. I don't think any of them are up on Disney Plus. If you have access to anything that's got Shout Factory movies up.
Again, this one and some of the public domain ones are on YouTube.
Yeah, and there's a lot of Mystery Science Theater up on YouTube. Go look up Roger Corman's list of films and MST3K and look up those episodes. They're good. But we're here to talk about this one, so why don't you talk about how we ended up getting this movie anyway?
So yeah, Corman had a couple of different production studios under his wing. One of them was a company called New World Pictures. Eventually he did sell New World Pictures to 20th Century Fox, which is how Disney now owns it. But at one point, while it was still an independent thing, it had a big partnership with Marvel. A lot of Marvel's television deals in the 80s, if you look to them, a lot of them will have that New World Pictures logo attached to it. Marvel was really trying to push their movies, their characters, wanted to push their characters to become movies because, a certain movie in 1989 directed by Tim Burton about a rich guy that dresses up as a flying rodent made a lot of money. And Marvel wanted that money. But another studio that he kind of founded was Constantine Productions. And Constantine Productions was able to get the rights to the Fantastic Four property. And they kept that. While the Fantastic Four movies that were released through 20th Century Fox, that was simply a distribution deal. When Disney bought Fox, they did not really get the Fantastic Four because Constantine Productions still had the movie rights. They're only doing it now because Constantine lost the movie rights because they couldn't make a movie after Fan Four Stick. It's been a few years. That time has passed, and the rights had reverted back to Marvel, now Disney. Now we're getting a new Fantastic Four movie. Constantine Productions, they had this movie. They were trying to make it happen. And like we've talked about this before with other films, when Marvel sells their movie rights, it's done under a time limit. You have a certain amount of time to get a movie in production. If you do not have a movie in production by a certain amount of time, those rights revert back to Marvel, and they can sell them to another studio if they want to. We kind of talked about this when we talked about the Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah. And honestly, I just want to point out that this is not just a thing that Marvel did. This is just standard for selling the rights to anything. Mm-hmm. So if you sell the rights to a book that you own, it's generally in the contract that you have the rights for 5 years to start production on a movie, and if not, then the rights revert back to, the publishing company or the author or whatever, and they can go shop it around to somebody else. It's just kind of standard for Hollywood, so that a studio can't just buy your rights and then just keep them forever and never do anything with it.
So like I said, they were all set to make a Doctor Strange movie in 92. And by the time they got production, it was too late. The rights had lapsed, and they ended up making a movie called Dr. Mordred. For bigger details on that, go back to our Doctor Strange episode. We go through all of that. So, same thing here. Time was running out of them trying to make this Fantastic Four movie. So they rushed into production. They got Corman to produce because, like you said, Kiki, if anyone can produce a movie under a time crunch, under a small budget, it's Roger Corman. So they produced this movie with no intention of ever releasing it because they just needed a movie in production. That is what the contract said. They put a movie in production for the sole purpose of keeping the film rights. And then so that later on, when they do have the big budget, when they do have the big director, when they can't afford all of the special effects that they need for this movie, it can happen. So this movie was made for a small budget, as fast as possible, so they could eventually make the 2000s Fantastic Four movie with the big budget and all that, which we've already talked about. You can go back to that episode and hear our thoughts on that. The thing is, about this movie, everything felt like they were going to release this. There was a trailer for this movie that played in theaters. The actors were doing interviews promoting this movie. And something that, while now is considered standard, was at the time unheard of. The actors were going to comic conventions to talk about this movie.
Well, the thing is that we have to point out something here. They brought on Roger Corman to produce this Fantastic Four movie, okay? He got a director named Ole Sasson, who up until that point had been a music video director, to direct the film, okay? So even though this is Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, he's not the director of the film, okay? It's a thing that a lot of people get wrong. But don't get us wrong. This is, as far as everybody kind of understands, it's kind of Roger Corman's movie. It does seem. But the thing is that the production company comes to Roger Corman and says, we want you to make a Fantastic Four movie. And Corman was like, awesome, that sounds great. And they're like, we're going to give you $1 million and about a month. It was actually 25 days, I think, is the estimate that I've heard. So just under a month, which, if you know anything about movies like this, that is really fast, especially for something with so many effects. Mm-hmm. And Corman was like, awesome. And he got, like I said, he got that music video director, Sesson, and they got to work. Now, as you stated, the production company never intended to release this film. This was a placeholder film, and that does happen sometimes. We've talked before about how, every couple of years or whatever, there's a weird little Dick Tracy short film that gets made so Warren Beatty can keep the rights to Dick Tracy. Mm-hmm. Just out of spite. The thing is that nobody told Roger Corman or the director or the actors or anybody involved in the production of this film that this movie was never meant to be released. So everyone on the production of this film treated it like, we're going to go to a theatrical release. Because who signs up for a film thinking it's not going to be released? Nobody.
Yeah, there was plans for a theatrical premiere. Apparently, the theatrical premiere was going to be at the Mall of America in Minneapolis. They were hyping that up and just.
They were going to do it for charity.
Yeah.
The tickets for the world premiere were supposed to go to charity. And like you said, they went to Comic-Con in San Diego. They showed clips from the film to hype it up. The actors were doing interviews. And then all of a sudden, all of the actors get cease and desist orders from the studio. And the studio shows up and confiscates all the negatives from Corman and, the director and, whoever else has a print and is like, no, this is ours. And it wasn't until like the early 2000s that Stan Lee was like, oh yeah, that company never intended on releasing that film.
When the other Fantastic Four movie came out.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, this is not a new thing. There's actually a term for this. They call it ash can film. As in, it's a movie made to be trashed for the sole purpose of retaining rights or whatnot. Is it ethical? No. Is it legal? Yeah.
But the thing is that usually when those kind of films are made, the people working on them kind of know that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally, like TV pilots would be a good thing. There's an example of Mel Brooks wanted to do something with Blazing Saddles, and he was told no because Warner Brothers still had the rights to it, And he said, how? How did they have the rights? We never made a sequel. We never did anything. Oh, no, they did a pilot for Blazing Saddles, the series, and they ash-canned it, so now they keep the rights. That did get leaked eventually, and yeah, it's very clear that they're just doing this. They know that this is going to get trashed, and they're not really putting a lot of effort into it. Yes, there's the pilot for the Blazing Saddles TV series. I'm sorry I put that in your heads.
Yeah, that would not be very good.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Most of the time they're told, yeah, this is just junk that we're just gonna put on a shelf and do nothing with. But to have them not know that, and watching this movie, you could tell they are putting effort into this movie. There is some definite love for the source material in this movie. And
there's a story of one of the people working on the movie going into a comic book store and buying just a bunch of Fantastic Four comics, and the guy running the comic book store was like, "Why are you buying all these Fantastic Four comics? Like, that's a lot of comics." And the guy was like, "Oh, I'm working on a Fantastic Four movie." And the owner said, "You're gonna be faithful to the comics, right?" And the guy was like, "Why do you think I'm buying all these freaking comics?"
I mean, if you want the full story, there's an entire documentary about this. This is where we're getting our information from. Very good documentary. Doomed, the story of Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. Do check it out if you can. I believe it is on Tubi right now for free. And might be on YouTube.
I think it's also on Amazon Prime.
And
you
YouTube.
Have Prime.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's there. I highly recommend, if you want to know the in and out, full dirty details of the movie, definitely check out that documentary. But somebody had it. I mean, they didn't retrieve every copy. One survived, and that got copied and copied and copied and copied and sold at Comic-Cons all over.
Yeah, bless anybody who saves physical media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, or today even digital copies, but you know, if you save media from destruction, you are my hero. Go forth and do the Lord's work, is all I gotta say.
I mean, it's not like there's another superhero movie out there that got filmed and never released that people are actually interested in watching.
The first person to leak that movie deserves a Nobel Peace Prize or something. I'm just saying it right now.
Leak Batgirl. Leak Coyote versus Acme, please.
Yeah. Anything they're trying to bury, you are the absolute GOAT if you leak it. I'm just saying.
I don't care if they're terrible movies. I want to see why they're hiding these movies.
Yeah, no. Also, the first person to actually put out a full copy of The Day the Clown Cried, you will be my hero. If you know, you know.
Yep.
Anyway, well, now that we've talked about the background of how this got made and then screwed over, let's talk about what's actually in this movie, because it's actually kind of interesting.
It's almost, not completely, I would say it's 75% 1-1 to like the first dozen Fantastic Four comics. Because you have you have the Fantastic Four themselves, you have their origin, you have Doctor Doom, but
you actually have legitimate Doctor Doom's origin.
Yeah, his actual origin, original origin from the comics.
OG origin, which actually shocked the crap out of me.
And they don't call him this in the movie, but we get the Mole Man. I'm sorry, the Jeweler. It's the Mole Man. It's the same plot. He kidnaps Alicia.
Yeah, and it's kind of the only thing they change is that they changed the Mole Man to the Jeweler. And I do wonder if they made that change because of Simpsons. It's the only thing I could think of.
It is 93, 94. Simpsons would have been on for a while.
And Hans Moleman would have been on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
By that point in Simpsons. So, like, it's the only thing I can think of.
The OG Dr. Doom origin, him and Reed as college students conducting an experiment. It goes wrong, and Doom is scarred. His body is scarred. His face is scarred.
This is the only part of the OG Dr. Doom origin that is a little different. Because this has always been my favorite thing about Dr. Doom. Okay, so if you go back to the, real as far back as you can go origin story, my favorite part about Dr. Doom is that there is the lab accident, and no, originally it was not because he was trying to open a portal to hell to save his mom or whatever. That was retconned later. Originally it was just there was a lab accident. As they say in Venture Brothers, a lab partnership is a sacred trust, and one is always supposed to look out for one's lab partner. But, there's an accident and Victor gets injured. Now, the funny thing is that my favorite part about this origin story is, according to, I think it's really more Kirby rather than Lee.
Yeah, it's definitely Kirby.
But according to Kirby, Victor was not really injured that badly in the initial
scar on his chin.
Yeah, he had a small scar on his face, and he was so desperate to cover it up that he made this mask, and he was so desperate to hide it that he didn't let the mask cool down enough before putting it over his face, and that caused the extra burns.
It makes sense based on, even in this movie, even in the comic, of Victor Von Doom being very vain, being very perfectionist. Oh no, my perfectly perfect face is ruined. I'm ugly. I'm hideous. I must cover it with a mask. My lord, the mask hasn't been cooled yet. I don't care. I must hide my imperfections. Oh my god.
Yeah, and I just think that is a far better origin story than most of the retconned ones later. He
never told Reed that. Reed still thinks it's his fault.
But as far as, understanding his psyche,
yeah,
it's just that he's such a pompous little prince that he's like, oh no, I have a small scar, must cover it. Third degree burns,
Curse you, Reed Richards.
Yeah. And now he just hates Reed for what is basically his fault, And that is the only part they've really kind of changed in this movie. It was just like, oh, it was an experiment gone wrong, and both of them get injured, but Victor gets injured more. And then everybody's like, oh no, he's dead, but really he's just like, you cannot see me with scars. I'm going to go back to Latveria and you put on a mask,
Apparently he's already the ruler of Latveria in this movie because he has two servants that are watching him constantly, and they're the ones that take the body out and put him in the ambulance and we'll take you to the best doctors, my lord.
Well, to be honest, he'd probably still have that even if he was just like, a crown prince or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they're a little, they don't really get into all of Latveria very much in this movie.
We see Latveria once, and
Yeah.
it's not a very good representation of Latveria.
Well, they made this entire movie for $1 million in 1994, so.
Yeah, it's true.
But I like them sticking to the original thing. I said it when we talked about the first released Fantastic Four movie. I hate the idea of, I know now in the comics that it's all like, well, Victor Von Doom is also a very accomplished wizard and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
But I always liked the original idea of Doom, which was that his power was, I have diplomatic immunity and a country.
And I'm a scientist.
Well, yeah, I mean, but so's Reed. I mean, it was kind of like he didn't have like superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
Like half the Marvel universe is a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't really mean a lot,
Yeah.
in the context of the Marvel universe. Like he didn't have any extra superpower. His main superpower is you can't prosecute him for anything. You can't go stick him in whatever the Marvel version of Arkham Asylum is.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just like, what are you gonna do? Like, stop that. Go back home to where you're a king. You know? He's a frustrating guy because he can show up and do things, and it's like, what are you going to do to him without it being an international incident?
He's a world leader. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, like,
He has a seat at
that
the
I
UN.
always found fascinating if it was written correctly.
Yeah.
But the movies always want to give him, like, oh, he's got lightning powers now or something. I'm like,
He's on the ship when it happens.
yeah, and I'm like, no, I just like that he's a petty little douchebag with like a grudge that he shouldn't be holding and way too much international influence. That's far more interesting.
I'm going to ruin the life of this one guy because of one mistake he did in college for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and the thing is it probably wasn't even Reed's fault. Because
he even says it in the movie, Victor, your calculations are off. Well, my calculations are based on your data. Which says a lot. If Reed put the data in, and he's looking at the calculations and says that they're off, it's his data, he would know the calculations. Victor did something wrong. But Victor is so vain, so egotistical, he would never accept that he did something wrong. And that's what they get right in this movie.
Yeah, honestly, this movie has the best portrayal, at least characterization in writing, of Victor Von Doom that we've seen in a live action. Some of the cartoon versions get it better.
Mm.
But as far as any of the live action versions where they've tried to do Doom, this is shockingly the best written version of Doom.
Now, there is, as I was telling you off mic, there is such a thing as too close to the comics, because at the beginning of this movie, we see college-age Reed Richards living at a boarding house owned by the Storm family. And there is 12-year-old Sue Storm, who has a crush on Reed, and Reed kisses her on the cheek. College student Reed Richards, middle school Sue Storm. Like I said, there's such a thing as too close to the comics.
Yeah,
He's so dreamy.
there was in the original comics a slightly worrying age difference if you mathed it all out.
It's been retconned since then because to erase that, but that retcon hadn't happened in 1994.
Yeah. Fortunately, the movie does a 10-year skip, and by the time they actually have any sort of relationship, she's at least 22.
So yeah, that gray hair is legit. He's just an old guy.
It's a bit cringe, and you hope that he was too busy with his studies to.
Oh, I hope so. That's the Reed Richards I want in this part of time. The Reed Richards that's so into his work he can't notice anything else. So please, please, please do not notice the 12-year-old girl that has a crush on you.
Yeah, that's. I'm really hoping that's the Reed Richards of this movie. I mean, the thing is that the opening scenes are so quick that there's only one scene between them, and it's really just like, oh, hey, here's me and my friend Ben, and we're like wandering through the house, and like, oh, hey, so, I'm going to give you a quick peck on the cheek. Okay, go have dinner now or whatever.
He's playing video games with Johnny.
Yeah, Ben's playing video games with Johnny or whatever, and, it's like. So, I mean, it's like, it's a really quick scene, and there doesn't seem to be anything suggestive in there other than the fact that you understand that she has like a crush on the college boy or whatever. But which is fine on her end. Kids can't help what they do, but he's the adult in the situation, so and there really isn't anything in the movie to suggest that he notices her as anything other than a child until she's 22.
It's even implied that he hadn't seen her in quite a while before they recruit them for this trip.
Yeah, and the weird thing is that the movie doesn't really go into why in the heck they would be recruiting these two for this trip.
Like, they're not scientists. At least this version of Sue Storm is not. It's
because that hadn't been retconned yet either.
That hadn't been retconned yet either. It's just, hey, they may not be scientists, but they know more about this project than anyone else. Yeah, because you've been talking to them about it for the last 10 years.
Apparently that's all you need to get on a spaceship in the Marvel Universe. Like, just have some college kid who lived with you talk about his, experiment from college that nearly killed his lab partner.
And what is all of this about? So in this version of the movie, centers around the Comet Colossus. Don't know if this is a reference to another Marvel character or not, but hey, if that's what you want to go with it. That was the original experiment that Reed and Victor did in college. They were trying to measure this energy coming off the comet. Calculations are off. Energy feedback. Victor gets injured and or killed. And 10 years later, the comet is making another trip around to Earth, and now they're going to go off into space, measure the energy close up, and to protect them from the radioactive waves, they have a giant diamond that is going to protect them. So before all that, when they pick up Sue and Johnny, Sue's their mom, who owns the boarding house, looks at them. Look at you, the Fantastic Four. And it's a cringe-worthy, groan-worthy moment, but it's also, oh, so that's how they got the name.
Of all the ways in the live action movies that they get their name, this one's probably the worst.
I mean, Johnny coming up with the name just because he's egotistical makes sense. Yeah, we're the Fantastic Four. Or Ben Grimm saying, it's fantastic. What was that? I said it's fantastic. But here that they get the name from Sue and Johnny's mom, like it's some nickname he gave to them when Sue and Johnny were kids or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's grown worthy. But as I mentioned, they have this diamond that's supposed to protect them on the ship, and enter the mole man / the jeweler / whatever, who apparently steals rare gems, but also lives in the sewers like a mole man, and has a group of misfits. Has Batman Return come out at this point yet?
I don't think so.
That's what I'm thinking every time I see Jeweler.
Yeah, the kind of penguin.
92, so yeah.
Yeah, the thing is that this diamond thing is a MacGuffin, and we don't really know, like, why it does what it does, or how they got it, or it's just kind of there. They're like, oh look, we've got a diamond, it's gonna protect us.
Diamonds are a girl's best friend, Susan.
Yeah. And then, like, the jeweler's like, oh look, it's a shiny thing, I want it.
And then we get the meet cute of Ben Grimm and Alicia Masters. Because she makes... you mentioned it's pretty much the Lionel Richie Hello video.
Yeah, they meet, and she feels his face, and then she goes home and sculpts a bust of his face and all that kind of stuff. It's like, but the whole thing is that whole scene where she's sculpting his face from memory, and it's like, I really just wanted the Lionel Richie song to be playing over that.
Like, she touches his face once, and not even his complete face. Yet she now knows how every nook and cranny of his face looks like in this sculpture. It's a movie. Don't think too much about it. So yeah, the jeweler steals the giant diamond. This works in Doom's favor because he was going to sabotage. I don't need to sabotage the flight anymore. They'll be killed by this fake diamond. And yeah, if you know the story of the Fantastic Four, it goes just like the comics. They're in a ship, the shields fail, they got hit by cosmic rays, they crash, and they get superpowers.
Yeah, the thing is that they give them later on in the movie. This is much later in the movie, but I'm going to talk about it here. That all of their powers are connected to their psyche.
I actually do like that, as corny as it is. I do like that.
Well, the thing is I don't mind their powers being connected to their psyche, because Marvel does that a lot. But Reed's way of talking about it is really dumb, especially the way he introduces Suze, because they have a fight, and it's after the fight that Reed starts putting it all together.
And Sue is trying to confess her feelings.
Yeah.
Like, I've always been shy around you, Reed, but I want to tell you that... Wait, what did you say, Susan? You said you're shy? That's it. That's the secret of our powers. You're shy, therefore you turn invisible.
Well, no, he doesn't say you're shy. He says, you don't like being shot at, so you went invisible. And I'm like, who the hell likes being shot with a gun, Reed? Like, is that on anybody's dating profile? I like kittens and long walks on the beach and being shot with a gun. Like, no. You weirdo.
Yeah, the scene could have been written better. You know, oh, Johnny's a hothead, so he gets fired. Reed is always trying to stretch himself thin.
I mean, the rest of them make sense, but the way he figures out Suze is like, people were shooting at you, and you don't like that, so you went invisible.
And then you rely on your brute strength too much. But these cosmic rays are going to take what we see as our weaknesses and make it our strength. I want to talk a little bit now about this part of the movie. The costume that they have for the Thing, again, it's 1993, 1994. I get that, but for the time, it's not bad.
Shockingly good, I would say.
I would say it's on par, and I know this is blasphemy. I know people are going to say it's blasphemy, but it's on par with the Ninja Turtle costumes from the original movie that just came out a few years prior to this.
Yeah, and for a lot less budget. I realize there's only one.
Yeah, instead of one compared to four. But the way they are still able to put expressions on that face and have his mouth move and his rocky lips enunciate. Granted, it's only in one scene where those lips enunciate. The rest of the time it's just blah, 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 blah. But the combination of animatronic puppeting, granted, there's no way they could have hired Jim Henson to do this, not for that kind of budget. But what they did, and then having the suit actor respond to the synchronization of whoever is puppeting the head of the Thing suit and the actor inside it is really good.
Yeah, I was really shocked. Also, I was really impressed by the stretchy arms on Mr. Fantastic, because they hold up a lot better than, like, the CGI that we got. I mean, I realize that most of it is practical in this, but it holds up a lot better than the CGI of the one we've already talked about. Because we talked a lot about how awful that CGI has not held up.
Yeah.
I guess would be the better way to put it. But in watching this one, I mean, there's like a shot at the end with the arm coming out of the limo and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that great. But most of the practical effects actually really weirdly hold up. And I was like, oh, this is actually way better than they would be doing, like, 10 years later or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that you got to understand, is that the Fantastic Four movie that we talked about, the one with Chris Evans, was just 10 years after this movie came out. And for a lower budget, this, for the most part, looks better. And I think, yeah, because it was practical effects and not CG. I want to make one little side note here, since we haven't really mentioned any of the actors in the movie, because we have Jay Underwood as Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and Jay Underwood has a bit of a connection to Disney, as he was the star of a series of TV movies for Disney called Not Quite Human. I don't know if you've ever seen those movies or not.
I have not.
In those movies, Jay Underwood plays robotic, uh, a robotic, a robot that is programmed to be human. Hence the name Not Quite Human. Think of Small Wonder, but just a teenager instead of a kid.
Huh.
It's a Disney movie, so we might. It's not on Disney Plus, so I think they want to forget about it. But every time I see Jay Underwood, I always think of the Not Quite Human movies. I believe he was also in a movie called The Boy That Could Fly. I don't know if you saw that movie or not.
No.
So whenever I see Jay Underwood in anything, I always think of the Not Quite Human films.
Speaking of costumes and such, I really enjoy how Doctor Doom's costume makes that clackety clackety sound throughout
Very
the entire
metallic.
movie.
Yeah, you would not get that in a modern MCU movie. You would not get that because it's too distracting. It's just, they would muffle that out or dub over it because just it would be too much noise for the scene that they're doing, especially them keeping Doom's voice muffled under the mask. And yes, it does make what Doom's saying hard to decipher on a YouTube video. But I like that they actually made it look and made it sound like here is a man wearing a suit of armor with a tunic over it. We never got that in any of the other Fantastic Four movies. We will probably not get that in the MCU Fantastic Four movie. But the idea of him, him moving his arms and the metal clinks. He moves his fingers and the metal clinks. And whether that's actual metal or not, probably not. The fact that they went through and Foleyed every movement that he made with metal sounds.
I don't think that's Foley. I just think that's what the costume sounded like.
Mm.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I do not think that's Foley. I think that's just the boom mics picking up the costume.
You think that was actual metal?
I don't think that was actual metal. I think that was I don't know if you've ever been around cosplayers wearing like heavy plastic armor. But honestly, that's kind of what it sounds like. I mean, some of it might have been metal, very light, aluminum or whatever, but to me, it sounded like what it sounds like when you're around a friend who's walking around the convention all day with plastic armor.
But yeah, but also keeping Doom. I don't know if that was a choice either, to keep Doom's voice muffled if they just couldn't get the actor to come back and do any ADR on that, because they're clearly doing ADR on the Thing when he's talking.
Yeah, you have to, because it's not the actor in the costume. Yeah. It's a stunt guy in the costume. So, you have to have that guy record all of his stuff separately.
And kudos to this film for crediting the stunt guy.
Yeah, true.
As a starring role in this movie. You would probably not get that in a modern movie. It would just be classified as stunts performed by.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Thing, one of the big storylines of the Fantastic Four is that Ben is stuck as a Thing, and they're trying to find a cure and turn him human again. And what turns him human in this movie is the power of love.
Oh, how sweet.
These two people who've only saw each other for a few seconds, and granted, Ben, as soon as he sees Alicia the first time, looks at Reed and says, I think I'm in love with her. And he go Reed in a typical best friend, kind of dogging her. Yeah, you keep thinking that. Girl like that's never going to go for a guy like you. But apparently she does, because, Doom kidnaps her. He's threatening her, and Thing is like, it's clobbering time. Ben, don't! I love you! And it's the power of love that turns Ben Grimm, turns the Thing back into Ben Grimm in a pretty good effect. And again, they probably could only afford to do this effect once, because they never do this effect in the rest of the movie when he turns back into the Thing. Because Alicia says that she loves him, he turns back into Ben Grimm, he runs off, he gets angry like the Hulk, and then you just get this. They do this spiral transition several times in the movie, and it's annoying. Because he starts yelling, you get a spiral transition of the Thing's face, and then he's the Thing again. And they did it earlier in the movie, too, when they're trying to escape, where, the Thing beats up the guards, and instead of actually showing it happen, you get a spiral transition, a few punching sounds, and then all of them are knocked out.
Hey, you work with what you got.
That's true. Could not afford to film that fight sequence. One thing that's very interesting is how they figure out that Dr. Doom is Victor. They never say Victor Von Doom in this movie. He's just Victor, and then there's Doom. And then he says, call me Dr. Doom.
I got my doctorate at the University of Latveria. They had to give it to me. I'm their king.
But, yeah, so it's like they figure it out by reading these symbols on one of his computers, and then it matches up to Victor's calculations from college that Reed still has. And then he puts two and two together. Doom is Victor. Victor's alive.
Was he going by a fake name in college?
I mean, the Fanforstic original script, as well as the Ultimate Comics, has him as Victor Van Dam. So it's possible he could have used a fake name instead of Von Doom when going to college in the States. Because if you're going to school with a guy named Victor Von Doom, and then you meet a guy who just calls himself Doom, it would be too easy to put those two together.
I mean, you'd think.
Yeah.
I want to talk about one thing I didn't like.
Mm.
I really thought the jeweler was pointless.
Yeah, Jeweler's only job here is to steal the giant diamond and kidnap Alicia for some reason. Like, I get that's what the Mole Man did in the comics. I get that.
But
His
could they
whole...
have cut him out and just, streamlined it and had more time with Doom?
Yeah. And the whole thing is that I need a queen of his little cavalcade of misfits. Why is she a freak? 'Cause she's blind? Even she thinks this idea is dumb. Like, I've never considered myself a freak. I've never considered myself an outsider. I'm an outsider here. I will never be your queen.
Yeah.
I don't feel beautiful here. Don't know why that line was said in the movie, but
Yeah, it's a really weird and nonsensical plot point, and I do not like it. I don't know why Victor couldn't have just stolen the diamond in an attempt to sabotage the mission, and then once they got powered, he was like, oh, well, I'll just use the diamond to steal their powers, and because that was kind of his plan once they got back. I need to get the diamond from the jeweler, and then I'll steal their powers, because that's how that works somehow.
It does lead to Doom kind of showing off how powerful his armor is. They just shoot him and he's just standing there. He's not even flinching. And then he says, I'll give you 3 seconds to move, and then he shoots him.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're right. That's probably the weirdest. Again, I get it. It's in the comics. Mole Man kidnapping Alicia in the comics, but that did not need to be adapted. If you wanted to have Alicia be kidnapped, you could have easily put, okay, I need to get somebody that is close to the Four to use as a hostage. Oh, here's this woman that Ben had a thing for. I'll kidnap her and use her as a hostage.
Or you could just have her in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's always a good way to do things.
Or, and I hate saying it, don't have Alicia in the movie.
Yeah, I mean that's also fine. I like Alicia, don't get me wrong, but you know, it's maybe she's not needed for this particular story.
Yeah. It just feels like the jeweler and the Alicia are in here to have them in the movie. Because that was the number issue that Alicia and Mole Man appeared in. We're adapting like the first 12 issues of the comic. Or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have easily thrown in Galactus here, right at the end or something. But yeah, the jeweler did not need to be in this movie. Alicia did not need to be in this movie. Doom could have set one of those two cronies of his to swap the diamond or whatever, or sabotage the mission in some capacity, which that is what happened in the comic. Doom sabotaged the jet. That might be a retcon too, but that's my version of it anyway.
Yeah, and it's not everything has to be the most comic accurate. You can change some things, but at least make it flow.
Yeah, like I said, there is such a thing as being too comic accurate. Case in point, though, X-Men 97 is very comic accurate in terms of adapting the stories. They're just using different characters in certain situations. Like instead of Colossus, we're using Rogue, as and in this particular story that they're telling in the show, and whatnot. And however, you could have done the same thing here. Again, I appreciate comic accuracy, but there is a such thing as too comic accurate. I mentioned it with Reed and Sue, and I mentioned here with the jeweler, Mole Man, whatever, and Alicia. Those two characters did not need to be in this movie. That entire subplot about the diamond did not need to be in this movie.
Yeah.
And it really slowed the movie down when the movie's really starting to heat up. And I get, and it's probably because Corman knew that the action scenes required from the comic would have taken too much time and too much money to film properly. So they just, okay, let's take a couple of more characters and give them moments in the movie.
That could be.
But yeah, they eventually end up going to Latveria. Again, the weird matte painting of a I do not like this matte painting they use to represent Latveria.
Latveria is one castle on a hill. That's it. It's the entire kingdom.
Instead of a thriving metropolis. And we get the freaking Fantastic Car out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, where did this Fantastic Car come from?
The Storm mom had it hidden away. Mommy Storm just...
Sure. The suits.
Well, Sue made the suits.
Which explains why they're made out of cloth.
Yeah.
Well,
but Johnny's is flame retardant.
Sure.
She makes a point of that.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't explain how the suits stretch or turn invisible.
Yeah.
That is one thing I liked about the 2000s movie. At least they explained that. But
you know what? I don't need explanations. Stuff just happens.
Rule of cool, right?
I mean, you've met me. You know that's not true.
Yeah, but the big climax in Latveria, Doom is going to shoot a laser. He wants to take the Fantastic Four's powers and give them to himself. And that goes wrong. So he's now going to shoot a giant laser to destroy New York City.
New York City?
Yeah. If only there were other heroes in New York City that could have stopped this. Oh, they don't exist in this movie.
They're all off-world. They're all doing other things.
So they go shoot the laser, and Reed is unable to get the laser down in time. But Johnny can fly faster than the laser, and we get the one and only full body flame on thing in this movie. And
it is the worst effect in the entire movie.
Like you said, they work with what they had.
It is the one time where you're like, oh yeah, this is a really low budget movie.
One thing I will say, though, I like that all of Doom's henchmen are dressed like Doombots.
Yeah, that is true.
Like, we don't get the Doombots in the movie because that would have cost too much, but having his henchmen all dressed as Doombots, I like that.
This movie does contain, like, possibly the funniest thing I've ever seen in a movie ever. Because, like, Doom is like, oh, I'm going to leave all my henchmen here to take out the Fantastic Four, and I'm going to go into the other room and have cheese nibbles or whatever the hell he's going to do. I don't even know. But, like, Doom just does that, like, Bond villain thing where he's like, I'm just going to peace out and leave it to the underlings, you know? Mm-hmm. And he wanders out of the room, and there's, like, a whole fight. And the Fantastic Four just wipe the floor with the henchmen and then escape. And Doom comes back into the room and he's like, well, now it's time to... Huh.
Yeah, it's a very audible huh.
Yeah, it's just like...
with a head tilt. It's like, huh.
And then the scene just cuts away. It's the most hilarious thing of a villain just walking in and being like, well, I screwed the pooch on that one. And it is the single funniest thing I have seen in years. And I was like, okay, that's a legitimately funny moment.
Like, Doom was legitimately shocked that his underlings could not get the job done.
Yeah, they're all, like, lying dead on the floor, having shot each other. Although there is no blood, no squibs. They are shooting each other at point-blank range with machine guns.
Fake blood costs money.
Absolutely no blood, no nothing. No squibs. Marks. Yeah, no marks, no squibs to damage the costumes, no nothing. It's very funny. They just shoot like cap guns at each other and fall over dead. It is very funny.
It's the funniest thing in this entire movie.
Oh yeah. But yeah, Doom's just little remark of like, now time to get back to Oh, okay. Like,
Like, he's not even angry. He's just, huh. All right, they're more clever than I thought they were. But you have that final moment between Reed and Victor as Victor falls off the castle and Reed stretches his hand to save him, and they have this big philosophical talk, or they try to have one, of Doom is really, Doom was willing to kill all four of the Fantastic Four to get their powers. He is sending a laser to destroy all of New York City, but he knows Reed will save him because Reed is just that good of a guy. But he would not allow himself to be saved by Reed Richards. He would never allow himself. Doom would never allow that. So he just slips his hand out of his metal gauntlet glove and just falls. But then Reed kind of puts the glove down, and then we see the glove moving. Doom lives in a sequel that will never happen.
and then, of course, we have to have Sue and Reed get married.
Because it happened in the comics. Though the CG, I was going to say, you know what the CG on, it's very early 90s CG on full Human Torch. It reminds me of the Lawnmower Man.
Yeah.
That's all I could think of every time I seeing it. It's like, when I first saw the movie, I thought it was hand-drawn animation, but no, this is CG. And it's really early 90s CG, and it's really 90s bad CG. But yeah, during the whole kerfuffle that's going on, Sue finally admits her love for Reed. Reed, I love you. And Reed admits that he loves Sue. Sue, I get. Again, she has had a crush on this man since she was 12 years old. What's Reed's excuse?
She's hot now.
She's a hot 22-year-old. And he's a graying 40-something. And of course, they get married in the Fantastic Four suits because that's how it was in the comic. And you get that really bad, like I said, the really bad effect of the stretching arm coming out of the limo. It's, yeah. Honestly, majority of this movie isn't so bad. Like, I understand why they didn't release this movie because it was never intended to be released. But you can tell that there was love put into this movie, love for the source material. The actors were not phoning it in. If anything, they're putting a lot of work into this. Joseph Culp is eating the scenery as Victor and Dr. Doom.
Yeah.
As that character should. All of these characters act like how they're supposed to act. They are putting everything they have into this movie. The Thing costume is really good for 1990. They are being very faithful to the comics they're adapting. And unlike the Batman movies of the era, this is very bright. This is very colorful, like the Fantastic Four is supposed to be. Would this movie have been a hit if he had released this? Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. But the thing is that as far as storyline, I think it's better than it's definitely better than Fantastic. And in a lot of ways, it's at least on par, and in some ways better than the first one to actually get released.
Yeah, and for a while, people were saying this was the better Fantastic Four movie, and I can see it. There are parts of this movie that it's done a lot better. Even the very brief scenes of the Thing walking around New York City trying to hide himself and getting called a freak. That was done very well in this movie. It's not played up as a joke as it was in the 2000 movie with a bird pooping on him.
Yeah, I hated that.
But it's like, it's very weird that, yeah, the best Fantastic Four movie so far has been the one that was never released. Although, twist my arm, I'll still say The Incredibles is the best Fantastic Four movie. But in terms of branding a movie Fantastic Four, this movie, it has heart, which you can't really say about something like Fantastic. And it has more heart than the 2000s movie, which says a lot. And it just goes into that when you have people that care about a property who want to make the best movie possible, even if they don't have the budget for it, and you can tell that in this movie.
Yeah, you could tell that the actors were thrilled to be playing the roles they were playing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these poor actors, they probably thought this was their big break,
Like I said, since the 89 Batman movie, every studio under the sun was trying to make a superhero movie. They thought this was going to be their Batman. Was it? No, I don't think it was. I don't think it would have been. But they really thought that they had something here, and there is something here. There is something great here. It's just people were going to make their own minds before they see this movie. I recommend seeing it. Again, it's on YouTube. There are there are dozens of uploads of this movie on YouTube. Find one. Sit down and watch it. It's 90 minutes, and with the exception of the jeweler parts and the Alicia parts, this movie goes really fast.
And honestly, the Alicia parts aren't bad. I actually kind of like the actress playing Alicia.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just her storyline doesn't really work into the movie in the way you would hope it would.
They did it better in the 2000s movie.
Yeah, that's one of the few things that I liked better in that film.
Yeah. So, Kiki, does the unreleased Roger Corman's Fantastic Four have the magic?
I would say yes. It's very charming, and it doesn't make me want to punch things like the other movies do.
I'm going to say yeah. Honestly, yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of heart in this movie that is missing from other adaptations of this movie. And again, we haven't seen the MCU one yet. That's not coming out till next year.
Yeah, and I mean maybe the MCU version will be, very good and all, and I would like that. I'm not rooting against it by any means, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But the Fox films, they felt like they were insulting my intelligence as a fan, and I hated that. And it was, whenever I watch one of the Fox ones, it feels like it's like mocking me for wanting to be a fan of this property. Like, you goofball. Why would you even like this?
Who wants a superhero team that's a family?
Yeah.
That's not cool.
Whereas, like, you watch Guardians of the Galaxy and it's like, not only are they a family, but one of them's a raccoon.
Yeah.
Like, and one of them's a tree. Um, so yeah, it's like, but this version, you know, it they didn't really go in on all the like we are family kind of stuff as much as I would have liked in a Fantastic Four movie. But it doesn't feel like I'm being insulted by being a fan of the Fantastic Four. It feels like everybody who made this movie was like, oh, people who are fans of this property are going to watch this movie, and they should enjoy this movie.
You're rewarded for being a fan because you're seeing these moments almost page for page to its benefit and detriment in the film. The comic accurate outfits for the Four and for Doom, which itself, you rarely see that on screen.
I really liked Doom's costume. It was very faithful. Um, I just, in a movie with more budget, they would have like, oh, and more either more budget to like ADR over the lines, or modern technology where they could have put a microphone inside the suit,
Mm.
um, then you would have been able to hear his dialogue more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So to be honest, I don't actually mind the clanging noises. I actually thought that was kind of cool. My only problem is that while, yes, in reality, a dude with a metal face mask is going to be a little muffled, as a film, you do need to be able to understand what your villain is saying. Looking at you, Nolan's Bane. So, yeah.
But yeah, I'd say the combination of the clanking of the costume and the muffled voice under the mask made Doom very hard to understand, especially, like I said, on a not that great upload of a YouTube video.
It's not like you really have captions on that thing.
And that YouTube video is coming from a copy of a copy of a copy of a VHS tape.
Yeah.
But the movie is worth watching once. I would say that. Take your time. If you have not seen Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, do yourself a favor. It's on YouTube. Go watch it. It's worth every minute, to be quite honest. And it's probably the best live action Fantastic Four film that has been made
So far. I mean,
so far.
I'm still giving the MCU a chance to wow me. Let's hope.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to the movie. Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, I'll always give Pedro Pascal a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
So
But yeah, I just gotta say, as we're wrapping up here, man, Roger Corman, what an absolute legend.
he had a great life. He had a great career. I'll throw it in there. See if you can find any of Corman's films other than, besides Fantastic Four. He's done a lot of great films. Check it out. I would even recommend, like I mentioned it, I would recommend the original 1960s Little Shop of Horrors. It's worth watching. Like Kiki said, there's a lot of Corman's films that have been on MST3K, and a lot of those movies are on YouTube, on the official MST3K channel. You do yourself a favor and watch them. But as for next week, we're going to go into more direct Disney, as we are going to be talking about the live action / animated hybrid, Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers, the movie. It's finally time to talk about that. And that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see how that one turned out.
So come back next week for Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers, the movie, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here. Join our conversations on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic. We are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, at Rewatch the Magic, and new episodes are available every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com. Remember, the magic is for everyone. It only stops if you let it. Podcasts are fun,
but there's work to be done.
We encourage you to get involved. Here are some organizations we support.
The American Civil Liberties Union fights for the constitutional rights of all Americans. Find them at aclu.org.
The National Network of Abortion Funds helps people find access to safe abortion services. Their site is abortionfunds.org.
The Trevor Project provides a 24/7 crisis helpline for LGBTQ youth and education services for schools on LGBTQ issues. They can be found at thetrevorproject.org.
Or find a way to help in your area.